You released last week your National Fiscal Outlook, and you report that Australia's spending and revenue is in the middle of a range of G20 countries. But you also note that many countries use public pensions funded through taxes to achieve what we do through compulsory superannuation. If you included compulsory superannuation into our spending and revenue calculations in the similar fashion to what many other OECD countries do, wouldn't that push us into the upper range on your table?
Thank you for your question, Senator, and I might hand over to Mr Pine. You're right, and we noted in the box in which we provided a comparison, an international comparison of Australia's spending and revenue and net debt position compared with other countries. We noted in that table that in part Australia does have a different arrangement for providing retirement incomes from many other countries, certainly not from all other countries. So countries like Canada also have a mandated amount of income which has to be saved as part of their Canadian pension plan. Countries like the US don't have explicit mandated savings, but they do have a range of tax arrangements which provide incentives for individuals to save through in ways that supplement the payments they would get from their social security system. So it is challenging when you're comparing different countries to control for all of the different ways in which we structure our economies and the ways in which we provide a range of different services. I don't have a point estimate for how much, well, if you like, if you were going to do a complete comparison across countries which controlled for retirement incomes, I think you'd have to have a baseline estimate of what is the amount of retirement incomes that would be provided. And Australia has a different system because we have a targeted means-tested age pension system, which is then supplemented by superannuation. And it would be quite a challenging exercise to actually control for all of those things in order to make sure that you were making a comparison on a like-for-like basis. It would increase estimates of Australia's spending and revenue relative to some other countries, but it would decrease it relative to other countries. Is there anything you'd like to add, Mr Pine?
Okay, I guess the point I was trying to get to was whether we are comparing like with like, and what you're suggesting is sometimes we are and sometimes we aren't.
I think what I'm suggesting, it is very difficult in any international comparisons to be comparing like with like, where you have different countries that are offering a very different range of services at different levels. What we're trying to do in the National Fiscal Outlook is to provide as comparable a comparison as we think we can do at the moment, particularly in Australia's case, looking at the national level rather than just looking at the Commonwealth level. This is a comparison which draws upon data that the OECD pulled together, that the IMF use, and I think that it is a reasonable comparison, notwithstanding the fact that different countries have different priorities when it comes to different programs. All
right. So, I guess ultimately it's a matter of judgment as to how high is too high in terms of spending and revenue, but to the extent that international comparisons influence decisions or judgments about that here in Australia, it would be nice to have a true like with like comparison, so that those who are influenced by international comparisons are comparing apples and apples. Do you think there's any possibility that you can, in future reports, because you do these every year, I think, take account of differences of pension funding?
I'm very happy to take that as a suggestion. The National Fiscal Outlook is one of our flagship annual publications, so we do think it's important to provide this information every year once all of both Commonwealth and state budgets have been landed. I think that question of how would you control for what is the size of pension, for example, as a percent of GDP or as a percent of wages that you'd be controlling for across countries? That would be the thing that you'd have to actually try and think about how you would estimate if you were going to provide that sort of a comparison.